Hello my friends, welcome to my study. This is where often I do write the stories and do other kinds of study and things. We're in chapter 17 of the novel A Look in the Dark, which I wrote quite a few years ago, and it's the fourth part of chapter 17. The chapter is called Cards on the Table. You remember that Danny, Carol, Ricky and Sue have sat down, had a kind of a formal meeting, decided what they're going to do. They're going to present the information to 4 different authorities at the same time. Those authorities being the police, the RSPB, that's the British Royal Society for the Protection of Birds, Customs and Excise, who would be dealing with things coming in and out of the country, illegal wildlife deals would be included there, and also David Brentland, Radical MP, who won't just let the matter be buried away somewhere. And then 2 weeks later, they're going to take the whole lot to Ricky's friend who works for the BBC so that it becomes a news story. But in the course of their having a drink afterwards, Ricky has started to tell them about the things that happened to his girlfriend, Penelope. His fiancée, in fact. And he met up, you remember, with the Russian diplomat, and the Russian diplomat told him, the last thing he said to him when he met up with him in Hyde Park was, "I do think you have a right to know that your fiancée was sacrificed by your government." So Ricky's now relating this. So he sat in reflection silently for a few seconds, sighed from somewhere very far inside that is deeper than the body alone allows for, and less motivated by an abyss of sorrowful memories. Danny, Sue and Carol waited as he sipped a little more alcohol. Ricky gave a bitter but not sweet smile and continued, "No, I thought, they would not sacrifice that beautiful body and person for the sake of getting one up on the communists. For a few weeks I tossed the things Yevgeny had told me around in my head. It seemed pointless to raise it with the authorities. How would I ever know if they were telling me the truth? I became quite paranoid, wondered if I was being watched. Spring came and I read yet again the last communication from my dear Penny. It gave a map reference and also a very clear description. Turn your back to the small waterfall and you will see a pyramid-shaped rock between you and the main footpath. Look to the left of the pyramid and there is a bank. Over that bank there is another bank. Between these 2 banks, separated by only a few feet, walk away from the pyramid and under some small trees, the 2 banks converge. Where they converge, dig down carefully for 2 feet, and there you will find my briefcase. Inside the case, in the code we've already broken, are 7 documents. 5 of these contain the information I was sent for. I'm not sure about the other 2, but I brought them anyway." As I say, I was very paranoid. Though I think, dear friends, that when dealing with the security forces, security services of any country, one is well to be paranoid. I have a friend in Nice, an Italian art dealer. I flew there and spent a few days with him. Then I flew home. A few days later I flew back again and I hired a car, drove through Italy, hired a small boat crewed by 5 good fellows. We sailed in and out of the port for 3 days, but on the 4th day we sailed to Greece. Cutting this awful story short, I went to the spot in the forest between the 2 banks, found the point of convergence and dug down a couple of feet, as Penny had said, and yes, Yevgeny was speaking the truth. I recovered Penny's briefcase, and inside, intact, were the documents. It was true. The British intelligence services did not even bother to pick them up. My very precious Penny was just an expendable decoy. "Oh, Uncle Ricky, that's awful. I never heard worse." Carol, who'd had more whiskey than usual, was sober, shocked, and coping with a mixture of sorrow and fiery indignation. Danny just did not understand how anything like that could even be allowed to happen, and poor Sue was still sobbing. Ricky hadn't quite finished yet. I brought the briefcase back to England and I make arrangements to talk to Penny's department. Her employers, you might say, asked them how important her mission had been, told them it would help me to grieve if she died for old England. Her old boss and another chap assured me that that was the truth. I asked if they had definitely recovered the documents. Yes was the answer to that. They told me they contained vital information. I brought them a drink and I told them I had something in the car that might interest them. Yes, my friends, you've guessed, I had the briefcase and documents in the car. Call customers, these. I told them I knew she was a decoy, and in the end they admitted that. But they insisted that she was to be met, but things went wrong. With the man who had the real documents, Penny had to be left as a decoy until he was safe in London. How do I know if they were speaking the truth? How would I? I was warned that it would be very unwise for me to take my story to the press, which I threatened to do. I looked in the faces of these two pillars of the realm, and I realised that my life would be even less important to them than Penny's had been. One suggested that people have disappeared for less, either being hidden somewhere or meeting with an accident. So I had to let the truth remain buried. I began my own war with their kind. Maybe now you all understand Sir Richard Claymore a little better. It may lighten the mood a bit if I tell you that 2 years later I paid a very clever thief to steal Penny's old boss, now retired, to steal his medals. I paid a lot to get them, and I took delight in taking them far out into the English Channel, putting them in a bag with a fishing weight that took them to the bottom of the ocean. That would have appealed to Penny's excellent sense of humour. Ricky smiled like a schoolboy who'd let the tyres down on a teacher's bicycle. Sue smiled through her tears and just about managed to say, I don't understand, Uncle Ricky, how you managed to be such a nice person despite them doing this to you, to Penny. Bless you, Sue. Well, anyway, the reason, Danny, old boy, that I'm telling you all this is because, as I said earlier, I have a proposal to make. Pausing, he looked into the eyes of each one. Each of his friends looked at him in expectation. I propose that here and now we establish an alliance to work together in protecting the environment and wildlife living in it, to investigate as needed any who make a threat to it. Hang on a minute, Rick, we only agreed about this one. Danny was a bit taken aback, but Carol touched his hand, and as he looked at her, she lightly shook her head. Danny continued, That is, Rick, you need to explain what you mean. Yes, of course, old boy. I'm sure I'm not putting it too well. You have your writing career, and Carol will work with you on that, no doubt. I have a mammoth job ahead of me, and I'll be needing a personal secretary come assistant. And I'm hoping, Sue, that you'll take the job. It'll be there as long as you want it. Sue was too shocked to respond. Her mouth opened, but the words failed to come out. So Ricky, enjoying the look on everyone's faces, continued, We will all have time for all the other things of life, but when a need is identified by any one of us, well, we come together, examine it, and determine how we'll go forward. Well, dear friends, what about it? He spoke these words in such a way, a final way, as to suggest he was sure they would all be up for it. There was a silence in the room, and for a while nobody answered. Carol was reminded of the wintry day that she and some friends, all like her in their early teens, had stood on the shore of Dungannon's Black Loch, and one of the boys had dared them to step out onto the frozen water. Nobody moved for a while, but then she did, stepping out onto the thick ice. An act she now knew was very foolish. It wasn't long before 3 14-year-old girls and 2 boys of similar age were sliding on the iced loch. All fear had vanished. You never learn, Carol, she was thinking as she said, Right, Uncle Rick, I am game if the others are. It was unusual for Carol to leap in without seeing what Danny had to say first, not because she always agreed with her husband, but it allowed her to gauge her words persuasively. She looked her much-loved husband in the face before continuing, Whoever thinks we can go back to the way of life as it was is kidding themselves. All 4 of us made a commitment that may even yet result in our deaths. Why? Because we're sick of seeing ruthless people strip the beauty of this planet away for the sake of profit and with no regard for the consequences. Well, I feel even deeper in that commitment. Me, a librarian? Forget it. I want to strike another blow for creation. Sue was also unhesitating. Shy at first, but now with a drop of whiskey and her emotions stirred up, she didn't feel such a minor son amongst the others. She rose up like a hot air balloon with the burner full on. Yes, Uncle Ricky, count me in too. I've learned a lot about cruelty and destruction in the last few weeks. I couldn't just leave it at that. I'd have to go and join something to fight back. But if it can be something with you three, why, nothing's better than that, I reckon. And you, Daniel, my friend? Ricky had a pleading tone in his voice, afraid Danny would raise some objections. Well, I reckon we did all right with this one. If the need arose, if one of us saw it, yeah, I'd go along with it. Ricky looked very satisfied. The way I see it, comrades, is that it's like a pack of cards. It is? Carol was wondering what was coming next. Then she remembered the phone calls. But when Sue said she would phone her parents, she wouldn't phone her parents when she drunk a little too much, they decided to make the calls the next day. Danny Green now did something more than unusual for him. In view of the whiskey they'd already consumed, he went to the kitchen and returned with a bottle of red wine. What's this? Carol asked. It's celebration time, and we may as well get hung for a sheep as for a lamb. I'll pour us all a measure of this, and then we can hear about Ricky's pack of cards. Once Danny had poured 4 decent-sized glasses of the not expensive Italian wine, all faces were looking to Ricky for explanation. Oh yes, I will explain the pack of cards. Cards are a kind of reflection of society in some ways. Kings and queens who run it all. Just beneath them the knaves, or jacks, like the Knave of Hearts who stole it all, Stanhurst types. Some legal and some illegal. Then there are the 10s and the 9/8s who work hard, get on, keep the wheels of everything turning. I guess many people fit in there. I guess the police are like the 10s in some ways. They are. Danny pointed at the empty whiskey bottle. How many of those did you actually have? No, this is not drunken rambling, old boy. Hear me out, please, before you ridicule me. Then come the 6s and 7s. They do much of the work but get little credit for it. So they're never sure where they stand. Your father, Sue, is probably placed about there. Sue was giggling about that more than she should, and Carol commented that it would probably just as well she didn't ring her parents. The aristocrat, who was more serious than any of the others, continued his analogy. There are the 5s, the 4s and the 2s, the underprivileged classes. Some here, but in other lands, sadly, there are millions and millions of them, people who are undervalued and who never get enough of anything. The unjustly treated, who rarely have a chance to determine their own destiny. Some of these may be the 2s, do not even have enough food for today. Is it any wonder that people rebel sometimes? Okay, Uncle Ricky, your Etonian mind is telling a good story here. So where do we fit in? Carol was amused by an analogy Ricky was using. Oh, that's easy, dear girl. We are the aces. We are? Yes, my dear, you're very clearly the ace of hearts, all fired up with emotion, concerned about justice and motivated to challenge all the wrongs. Carol was pleased, so she pointed at her husband, and Ricky responded, Daniel is, of course, the ace of clubs, prepared to use brain and force to accomplish good. Me, force? I believe you forced your way into a certain office at the start of the investigation. Ricky had a satisfied smile. You, dear Sue, are the ace of spades, being prepared to dig and dig until you find all the right information, a real worker. And as for me, I guess I have to be the ace of diamonds because I'm blessed with a bit of cash to fund us. Ricky joined in the laughter. Then he asked for a pack of cards. Carol collected one from a cupboard in the sitting room. He flicked his way through and took out the 4 aces. So tell me, my friends, he asked, where do these fit into the pack? Sue was quick to reply. Well, in Pontoon they can be a 1, but they're also the best card to get with a king. They're 11 then. Exactly, dear girl. They're good anywhere in the pack, and so are all of you. Carol liked the idea. That's it then. We're the Ace Alliance. That, Carol, is excellent. From here on we're to be known as the Ace Alliance. Ricky was very pleased that his imagery had been accepted and added to. Right then, that's it. We hand it all over to the authorities and eventually the BBC guy. All we tell them is that we're only to be known as the Ace Alliance. Danny's conclusive comments sealed the matter, and all 4 of them felt the joy of camaraderie that is so strong when the uniting factor is the pursuit of a noble cause. Sue was certainly a little tipsy, and normally drank very little, lifted the pack of cards, shuffled them, and then hunted for the 4 aces, and with another outburst of giggling, handed each of them the card Ricky had attached to them. She put the ace of spades in her handbag, and Carol knew that there was no way she was ever going to get that playing card back. Eventually the Greens got Ricky safely comfortable on the settee for the night. Carol helped giggly Sue up the stairs to her room. Once Carol and Danny were in bed, their conversation was for a change very limited. When Danny woke 7 hours later, Carol was still sleeping peacefully, and he was glad they had celebrated a bit. He got out of bed to get on with some writing, as he had a few ideas that he wanted to put on rough on paper before they vanished. He was in his study for nearly 2 hours before the others started to stir. Danny smiled as Sue informed Carol that she didn't really feel like an ace just now. After a light and fairly quiet breakfast, Sue said she would phone her parents. Her father had Thursday and Friday off, she knew, because he'd mentioned it all at the weekend. Danny suggested she go to the study and make her call in peace, and closing the door behind her, she noticed a half-written article about song thrushes on the desk. It reminded her of the stone Danny had shown her in a neighbour's garden surrounded by broken snail shells, and his explanation that this was the song thrush anvil where he broke open his favourite food. She was very pleased when her father answered the phone. She was very happy to have her old relationship back with her dad again. "Hi, Dad." "Sue, this is unusual with midweek. How are you? Is everything all right? No problems, are there?" "No, everything's just fine. I think I might have a permanent job." "Really? There?" "Maybe down this way with the Green's best friend." "That's good, but your mother will miss you, and so will I." "Listen, Dad, I'm sorry I've not been up to see you, but it's been a hectic and exciting time down here. We've nearly finished the work I was doing with Danny and Carol, and I've learned so much about birds and other living things. But listen, something dramatic's about to happen soon, and this is very important. None of us must be thought to be part of it." "Sue, what is going on? You are not involved in anything illegal, are you?" "Don't be daft, Dad. I thought we'd all sorted out. Of course I'm not." "Sorry, love, I didn't mean... I just mean... It's all a bit vague. I wish your mother and I knew what was going on." "Oh, you will, Dad. You must never let anyone know, though, that we set all this in motion." "Set what in motion?" "You'll see soon. When you do, I think you'll be proud of me, Dad, and my 3 friends. When you meet them, you're going to love them, but you and Mum must never let anyone know we're involved." "It's all so MI5-ish. It still worries me a bit, love." "Dad, it's all right. Trust me. How's Mum?" "She's okay. Not here at the minute. Old Mrs. Dowler took a fall and hurt her ankle. Her son's in India at the moment, and your Mum's keeping an eye on her." Typical Mum. "Is Mrs. Dowler all right?" Sue remembered the friendly Indian lady a few doors along the street who'd often given her Indian sweets when she was coming home from school. She could remember the smell of beautiful Indian food coming out of the house. "Yes, love. She'll be okay. Nothing broken, just sprained. She's a tough old bird." "Good. Well, listen, Dad, I have some calls to make, but just remember what I said. When it all happens, you and Mum must say nothing to anyone, all right? When I call at the weekend, I may be able to tell you when I'll be up to see you. Bye for now. Love to Mum." Almost immediately, Sue dialed Theo's number. The Greek cafe owner lifted his phone and shouted for his customers to take a seat, and he would be with them soon. "Hello, Theo speaking." "Ah, Sue, how are you? How's that lovely Carol and Danny, eh? What's that?" "Listen, Theo, you have no need. You've been no end of help to us, and over the next few weeks it will all happen." "Ah, you get him good, yeah? I'm him fixed good, is it?" "Yes, Theo, he will be fixed good all right, and you will have been an accomplice in getting him fixed, but listen, this is really important." "Ah, I know that Danny Green and the rest of you fix him. I knew that." "It is good, eh? But Theo, listen carefully to what I'm about to say to you. Theo, for your sake and for our sake, when it happens, do not breathe a word to anybody. Just let it happen, okay?" "But Sue, the newspapers, they must know about the great Danny Green and his friends." "Yes, what you say. Ah, yes, credit when credit due. That's it." "No, Theo." Sue spoke sharply and regretted it. Theo was a good man and she didn't want to hurt him. He didn't speak. "Sorry, Theo. Just think through. Our enemy, what would he do, even if he was in a prison cell?" "Ah, now I see it. Good girl, so you stop Theo do stupid thing. You and me, we know nothing, yeah? What you say, Mum is her word." "Something like that, Theo." "Thanks for help. You're much appreciated by all 4 of us, and you're a true friend to me, Theo. Thanks." "You are my good friend, Sue. And the others, I like lots. That Rickert, he tough. but no snob, eh? You keeping okay, Theo? You sound a bit out of breath. Oh, I all right. Saw Dr. Mundy. Okay, no worries. Well, you take care. I'll see you when I visit my parents. That's nice, Sue. Your father, he bring your mother. Nice lady. They have coffee. I tell them be proud of you. You, a good daughter. Bless you, Theo. You're a good man and a brave one. I think God must look down and smile about you. He is busy watching crook like you know who. Maybe not even notice old Greek, eh? Hey, you tell Danny, Carol and Rickard I as high as a kite with happiness. Sue returned to the room to join the others to find them all in stitches as Ricky related to them the tale of how he managed to sink his father's boat. Carol phoned Paul and he instantly understood. He cautioned that they be really careful and stated that if word got out at all, a certain major would consider them all to be legitimate targets. And Carol, despite the seriousness of the subject, was amused at how the culture of the Troubles came out in Paul's speech. He also informed Carol that a certain friend on the border was asking about them and had asked Paul to tell them he was noticing the birds more these days. Paul called Dylan to the phone and he gave a friendly bark at the sound of Carol's voice. As Carol descended the stairs, she felt certain that there was no doubt about Sir Paul Hanlon's ability to keep everything to himself. Paul, for his part, took Dylan for a walk and enjoyed the feeling of well-being that came from knowing he had played a small part in the operation that would stop some of the illegal wildlife trade in many parts of the earth. So there it is, the end of the chapter. What next? Hope that all gave you some things to think about. I hope you're enjoying listening. I appreciate you listening. Thanks so much. Next episode to follow shortly. Love and peace to you, my friends, now and future. Bye-bye. Bye.